Alright, everybody, peace. Welcome to the STBY College Football Show. Wherever or however you're listening, we're so grateful to have you with us. As you guys know, I'm your host, Casuan, and we got a wonderful show for you today, guys. We are going to be recapping some of the best games of the week in college football. The big news this weekend coming out of college football with Kansas upsetting Oklahoma. Will this have a major impact on the Big 12 in the college football race? We're going to talk about all that. And we're also going to be talking about some dominating performances from the SEC, including Georgia. And we are also going to be recapping some Pac-12 action with Oregon and Utah. And we're going to talk about how my prediction was way off for that game. But it's okay. No one's perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. And I'm on up to that. I definitely did not predict that game correctly. But before we get into any of that, guys, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well, so you guys can stay up to date on all the latest content. Be sure to follow us on Patreon as well. You can also by going to patreon.com, clicking on the search bar, and typing in "Sorry to Bother You Show." That way you can get access to all of our exclusive content that we post daily. And if you'd like to support our network and our company, you can do so by following the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/Sorry to Bother You Show/tip. Once again, it's streamelements.com/Sorry to Bother You Show/tip. None of this is possible without you guys as fans, so we're so grateful and honored for all the love and support that you show us, and it's an honor and privilege to have this platform to talk about sports and other topics with you guys. With that being said, let's go and get right into it, guys. Like I said, big news coming out of the college football this weekend. The Kansas Jayhawks upsetting number 6 Oklahoma by a score of 38-33. Kansas perhaps having their biggest win, perhaps in program history, if not program history, at least of the 21st century. And listen, Kansas did a great job of limiting Oklahoma's passing attack. They held Oklahoma to 171 passing yards. They forced the interception on Dylan Gabriel, though they did not do a good job of controlling the run. But Oklahoma's been good at running the ball all year. This is a tweet. Tawee Walker from Oklahoma had 146 yards and a touchdown. Dylan Gabriel added 64 yards on the ground himself to go along with 3 rushing touchdowns. Gavin Sawchuk had 6 carries for 19 yards. Now, obviously, Oklahoma, they are running backs by committee, and they did a good job running the ball. But, however, late in the game, after Oklahoma had generated a turnover, they allowed Kansas to come back and score. And, in that final possession, Oklahoma wasn't able to get a stop. They weren't able to get a score. Oklahoma wasn't, and so it allowed Kansas to pull off the upset. But something that Oklahoma has struggled with all season was their defense. Listen, they gave up 38 points to Kansas. Primarily, somewhere that Oklahoma has struggled with was the run, was their rushing attack. Their front seven has struggled at times for Oklahoma. And listen, Devin Neal of Kansas had 25 carries for 112 yards. Jason Bean had 4 carries for 62 yards, and Daniel Hishaw Jr. had 12 carries for 51 yards. And that was the name of the game. Kansas was able to get back to the game by running the ball. And on top of that, Jason Bean, he added 218 yards in the air as well, though he did throw 2 interceptions. And I can't recall the last Big 12 game where neither team threw a passing touchdown. What a strange stat, is it not? Dylan Gabriel or Jason Bean, neither one of them threw a passing touchdown, yet the score was 33-38. That was so interesting to me when I was watching this game. However, watching this game made me. I said that Oklahoma was the most physical team in the Big 12 based on the performance against Texas. But after watching this game, what that makes me realize is that Oklahoma-Texas game was more bad Texas as opposed to good Oklahoma. And I say that because we saw how Kansas performed against Texas, though they had a couple of injuries on the offensive side of the ball during that game. They started out well in the first half, but Texas eventually imposed their will physically on Kansas. And that's what you expect out of Texas, right? But what this showed me was that Oklahoma wasn't as good as the committee, or sorry, not the committee, what the AP poll thought they were. And listen, now we go into the big, as we move forward in the season, now you're going to have at least a one loss Big 12 champion. And really what the question now becomes is, has the Big 12 eliminated their chances of making the college football playoff? And by not being a prisoner of the moment and not reading too much into this loss, because Oklahoma's still going to be ranked in the top 10 at the highest, 11 at the lowest, somewhere around that frame. I don't want to be too big of a prisoner moment, and I don't want to read too much into this loss. However, I can't see a way where the Big 12, a one-loss Big 12 champion, makes the college football playoff. I can't see it now, because now what happens is, listen, you still have Georgia, you still have Ohio State, you still have Michigan, you still have Washington, Florida State. Those are 5 teams right there that are undefeated, right? And we haven't even talked about Oregon yet. We haven't talked about Alabama yet. I just don't see how you can have a one-loss Big 12 champion in the college football playoff, because worst case scenario, you get an undefeated Big 10 team, you got an undefeated ACC team, and then you still have to have a Pac-12. Is anyone going to question whether the Pac-12 has been more dominant than the Big 12 this year? And what will be more credible, a one-loss Big 12 champion or a one-loss Pac-12 champion? No one will question the Pac-12 in that scenario. And then you got the SEC. Alabama's playing well. They're more likely going to match up against Georgia in the college football playoff. In the SEC championship game. So you're telling me that if for some reason, if Alabama manages to upset Georgia in the SEC championship game, that now that you might have 2 SEC teams in the college football playoff again, this is the most parity that I've seen in college football in a very long time, definitely since the inception of the college football playoff, which makes it exciting, but it leaves less margin for error, which makes for great football, in my opinion. It makes for a more scandalizing experience, and it makes for more meaningful games being played each and every week. And by expanding the college football playoff, it would just diminish that. So I'm not a fan of expanding the college football playoff at all. This is why you implement the college football playoff, because it makes each game during the season more meaningful. But that's another story. That's another discussion for another day that we'll get into. With all that, I just don't see how you can have a one-loss Big 12 champion in the college football playoff, which is why I do believe that the Big 12 has all but eliminated themselves from the college football playoff by Oklahoma getting upset by Kansas. I don't see how it's possible now for a Big 12 team to make the college football playoff. Now, when the college football playoff committee, when they come out with their first rankings of the year tomorrow on Tuesday, we're going to discuss that. We're going to talk about it. But that will say a lot. Those initial rankings will say a lot about what the committee thinks about the Big 12 and what they think about the Pac-12. It will say a lot right there. And listen, is Oklahoma or Texas, are either one of those teams even the best one-loss team? Are either of them better than Oregon? Are either of them better than Alabama? These are questions that we need to ask. Are either of them better than Penn State? Now, I would say both of them over Penn State, but just posing the question. These are things that we have to think about, because these are things that are going to be looked at. These are things that are going to be discussed by the College Football Playoff Committee. And listen, I'm not saying a loss to Kansas is a bad loss, because Kansas has completely turned their program around. Like I said, this is the biggest win, if not in program history, at least of the 21st century. They're 6-2, 3-2 in the conference. They have beaten Oklahoma. They played well for a half against Texas. This Kansas team is not a bad loss. Listen, they beat BYU. They've beaten UCF. They beat Illinois, they beat Nevada. They have a close loss against Oklahoma State. Listen, this is not a bad Kansas team. So I'm not saying this is a bad loss, but loss is loss, right? And I don't see how I don't see how the Big 12 can have one loss Big 12 champion in the college football playoff this year. Just too much parity, too much talent in the college football playoff race this year, and this is a year where your margin for error is at its smallest for these teams, and it's unfortunate, but it's just shows how beautiful college football playoff is at this point in time. But let me know what you guys think in the chat room. Do you guys think that Oklahoma still has a chance, or any Big 12 team still has a chance of making the college football playoff? And if so, who has a better chance, Oklahoma or Texas? But let me know what you guys think. Share your thoughts in the comment section. But that being said, guys, we'll be back in our next segment. In our next segment, we are going to be discussing some Pac-12 action between Oregon and Utah. So be sure to stick around for that, guys. You are not going to miss it. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. In case you missed the first segment of our show, we just discussed the big news coming out of the Big 12 with Kansas upsetting Oklahoma this past weekend, and we discussed why this all but eliminates any chance that the Big 12 had of a team representing them in the college football playoff, because this year has had the highest amount of competition, highest amount of parity for college football across the board, and that makes it just a little more difficult for the college football playoff committee when choosing the teams for the top four, and it also decreases the margin for error that these teams have going throughout the season. But let me know what you guys think in the chat room. Has this loss all but eliminated the Big 12's chances of having a team in the college football playoff? Let me know what you guys think. In this segment, guys, though, we are going to be discussing some Pac-12 action with Oregon dominating against number 13 ranked Utah this Saturday on the road. And listen, I'll be the first to say it. I was wrong with my prediction. I know that on Thursday I predicted that Oregon would actually lose by a wide margin to Utah because of Utah's defense. What I did not take into account, though, was the physicality of Oregon when making that prediction. Listen, I wasn't sold on Oregon's physicality because I didn't think that they had played a physical team up at this point of the season. Listen, they played Washington, they played Colorado, but they haven't played the more physical teams in the Pac-12 yet, i.e. Oregon State, who just lost to Arizona this past weekend. That's because they had a lot of offensive struggles that game. Not necessarily the defense, and also Utah, who is probably the second most physically dominant team in the Pac-12. But what this loss against Oregon showed me for Utah was that they're going to miss Cam Rising, and there's only so much that they could do without him. And listen, they're starting their backup quarterback, Barnes. He's young. I believe he's a sophomore. For one of you guys. If I'm wrong about that, one of you guys can correct me, but he's young. He's got a lot of development, but he's not ready for this stage yet at this point in time. I'm sure he will be, but he's not ready yet. And listen, Oregon's front seven just did such a great job of generating pressure, and they did a great job of controlling the clock, and they jumped out to a lead early on. Listen, they were up 14-3 at the end of the first. Listen, Bo Nix, with his performance, just added another star in his cap for his consideration for the Heisman Trophy. Listen, he went 24-31 with 248 yards and 2 touchdowns. The ground game for Oregon, once again, running back by committee. Bucky Irving had 14 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown. Jordan James had 5 carries for 38 yards. Bo Nix had 8 yards. Jaden Lamar had 8 yards as well. And listen, Troy Franklin receiving had 8 receptions for 99 yards and a touchdown. Listen, so it was extremely balanced attack as usual by Oregon. But I was impressed with the defense, specifically their front seven. And the front seven has been its bright spot defensively for Oregon throughout this year. And the secondary did a great job of generating turnovers as well. Listen, they created 2 turnovers. They had 2 interceptions on Bryson Barnes. And we know that Utah already struggles offensively throwing the ball, and coupled that with the front seven that they had to go up against Oregon, just made their offense struggle. The offense never really had a chance to get into a rhythm. I believe they had under 300 yards of total offense, Utah did. So, Utah did not perform well, and because Utah's offense was not able to stay on the field, it just tired their defense out, and so the defense started to give up big play later on in the game, and that's when Oregon started to pull away. And that's why this game turned out the way it did. And what this tells me is that this now heightens the possibility of the Pac-12 having a one-loss champion. But a one-loss Pac-12 champion will get into the college football playoff. I know we just talked about that a Big 12 one-loss champion won't get into the college football playoff, but that's because the conference isn't as strong as the Pac-12. I believe the Pac-12 over the course of the season, more consistent, has been the best conference in college football. And listen, Oregon will, if you're asking my prediction now, I think Oregon and Washington are going to meet up in the Pac-12 championship again, and we will see what happens with that. But say Washington goes in undefeated, and then they lose to Oregon in the Pac-12 championship. You get Oregon in there. I think obviously Oregon would then make the college football playoff. But then do you leave out Washington, who has been at this point, up in this point in the season, the best team in the Pac-12? I still think they are the best team in the Pac-12. And if you had to ask me, I believe that they would beat Washington would beat Oregon if they were to match up in the conference championship again. But that's why I say there's so much parity and so much balance in college football this year. This is the margin for error this year is smaller than it's been at any other point since the college football playoffs inception, which is why I was saying in the previous segment that with Oklahoma losing to Kansas, there's no way you can get a one-loss Big 12 champion in there. So I do believe that the Pac-12 will have a good chance of having a one-loss a one-loss Pac-12 champion will have a great opportunity of getting into the college football playoff. At least a better opportunity than a one-loss Big 12 champion. And listen, Oregon is they're continuously starting to improve. They are peaking at the right time. and this game against Utah showed that they can play with physically dominant teams. So I was impressed. with Oregon. Oregon is starting to impress me. I wasn't sold on them at first, especially after the game against Washington, but I'm impressed, and they are continuously starting to improve. I'm happy to. I'm glad to see it. But let me know what you guys think in the chat room. Did this win by Oregon impress you? What does this win tell you about the Pac-12? And do you think Oregon still has a good chance of making the college football playoff? And also, don't be surprised, guys, when the ranking comes out tomorrow. Don't be surprised if somehow the committee finds a way to rank Oregon in that top 4. Do not be surprised if that happens, because we know, listen, the college football playoff committee does not have to follow the same standards and regulations that the AP poll and the coaches poll have to follow. So don't be surprised if Oregon is somehow ranked in that top 4, maybe 5 at the lowest. I wouldn't be surprised, because Oregon is starting to pass the eye test now, and the strength of schedule is there as well. And listen, their one loss is to the second best team in the country, in my opinion, in Washington. So it's a good loss. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're in the top 4, when the rankings come out. But let me know what you guys think in the chat room about that. And in our next segment, guys, we are going to be talking about some SEC action and Georgia's dominant win over rival Florida. So, guys, be sure to stick around for all of that. You are not going to miss it. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. In case you missed the previous 2 seconds of our show, we just discussed some Big 12 action between Kansas and Oklahoma, as well as some Pac-12 action between Oregon and Utah. And in this last segment, guys, we're just going to be discussing some SEC action with Georgia's resounding victory over Florida and what this means for the SEC. But first, let's talk about what it means for Georgia, specifically Georgia. What this means is that Georgia can sustain themselves offensively without their starting tight end. Forget his name is slipping my mind. Forgive me. But that was a cause for concern for Georgia, specifically offensively. How would they perform without their starting tight end being out for the season? And listen, Carson Beck showed that he can sustain the offense. And I know Beck has been inconsistent over the course of the season, but this is a big win. This is a huge win for Georgia, going up against their SEC East rival in Florida. Listen, we don't have to talk about their defense. Their defense has been phenomenal all season long. Offense has been a point of concern. They're only averaging about 375 yards per game of total offense, which has been a cause of concern for Georgia. But this week showed that they can score when necessary, and Georgia, it appears, is starting to peak at the right time. Listen, Beck threw for 315 yards and 2 touchdowns, so that's obviously that's amazing. But I will say that Florida has started to, their trajectory has gone in the opposite direction of that of Georgia, specifically since their win against Tennessee early on in the season. Florida has been inconsistent, but we know that Florida's in a little bit of a transitional period as well with the recruiting class, and they're going to be good, but not now. But listen, they're still 5-3, so and when I say good, obviously standard. When I say good, it's like an elite level, the top of the class in the SEC. You're vying for just opportunity to make it to the SEC championship game. Florida isn't there yet, but they will be. The real test for Georgia is going to come when they play Missouri this weekend. But this was a great win for Georgia, especially going into the first week of the college football playoff rankings. This win is all but going to solidify Georgia being ranked as number one, barring any unforeseen votes or circumstances when the rankings come out tomorrow. And like I said, if Georgia loses to Alabama in the SEC championship game, I don't see how you can leave out Georgia of the college football playoff. And you could very well have 2 SEC teams again in the college football playoff. But like I said, there's so much parity, so much balance, and not going to say balance, but so much competition in college football this year. And as I continue to say, the margin for error this year is smaller than it's ever been since the college football playoffs inception in 2014. But it's a great win for Georgia. One, because it's against Florida, who's a formidable team and perhaps the best team that Georgia's played all year. But more so because it comes on the heels of the inceptional rankings for the college football playoff for this year. That's why it's a big win for Georgia, and they beat Florida resoundingly and convincingly, and it wasn't close. Like I said, the score was 43-20, and something that has been an issue for Georgia proved to be a positive and something they excelled in this past week game, and that was their passing attack, and that was their offense as a whole. So it shows that when Georgia can clear up those mistakes and they can get into a rhythm offensively, listen, they're still the best team in the country. And that's what this game showed, and that's why it's important. But let me know what you guys think. Was this a big win for Georgia? What does it say about the SEC? What impact will this have on the college football playoff rankings that come out tomorrow? Let me know what you guys think. Share your thoughts in the chat room. I would love to hear all about it. But I hope what this show showed, what it did for you guys, it shows how much parity and just how much talent there is in the college football playoff race this year. Listen, there are legitimately Georgia, Washington, Michigan, Ohio State, Florida State, Oregon, Oklahoma, Texas, Alabama. There are legitimately nine teams that have a legitimate chance of making the college football playoff this year, and we're already going into week 10. I'm not sure if I've ever seen this before, and this is going to be great. This is great for college football. I don't envy being on the committee board and the committee board members for college football playoff this year, but it is exciting and it's great for college football. And it's great. Like I said, I'm excited to see it. But let me know what you guys think in the chat room. What do you guys think is going to be the initial rankings for this year's college football playoff rankings that come out tomorrow? Let me know what you guys think. But with that being said, guys, that's it for our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a wonderful show. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well, so you guys can stay up to date on all of our latest content. Be sure to follow us on Patreon as well. You can do so by going to patreon.com, clicking on the search bar, and typing in Sorry to Bother You Show. That way you can gain access to all of our exclusive content that we post daily. And if you would like to support our network and our company, you can do so by following the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/sorry to bother you show/tip. Once again, it's streamelements.com/sorry to bother you show/tip. Listen, none of this is possible as you guys are fans, so we're so grateful and honored for all the love and support that you show us, because listen, we're a pro-truth channel, we're unbiased, and that's not something you see in media today. So we're honored to have a platform like this and share, pro-truth with you guys, a pro-truth message, because that's not something you see too often in media today. So we're grateful to be one of the few media platforms that still does that. So with that being said, guys, we'll be back again same time tomorrow, 12 p.m. with our NFL show tomorrow, because it is Tuesday. But until then, guys, continue to stay safe, be vigilant, make smart decisions, and peace.